Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Kiana. I do a lot of sewing and fashion videos, and today I have a sewing tutorial and pattern for this asymmetrical ruffle skirt. The pattern for this will be the first link down below, and as always, you guys know I love to give my subscribers with their notification bells turned on a little discount, so you can use the code asymmetrical to get 30% off until tomorrow at midnight Eastern time. Also, if you want to see a vlog of me making the original skirt to this, I will link that on the top of the screen and down below. You can see my whole design process there. I'm ranking this as a beginner-friendly pattern because the main design detail to this is all of these gathers here and on the hip, which can take a little bit longer. However, as long as you take your time, go slowly, follow the tutorial, I believe a confident beginner can complete this pattern. I will have all the supplies and materials needed to create this skirt in that first link down below in the listing description of the pattern, and I will also have all of my equipment that I use throughout the video linked in the video description. Oh, and one little note, throughout the video you might notice me flip-flop between two different skirts when I'm showing you how to sew things, between this red skirt and the original blue skirt. I just used some footage from the red skirt to supplement the blue skirt if I felt like we were missing some detail shots. So just letting you know, you're gonna see two different color skirts. But yeah, I think that's everything. So without further ado, let's just get into the tutorial. All right, so step one is to print out your pattern at 100% scale. Do not trim down or overlap your sheets of paper when lining them up. Line up your sheets of paper edge to edge and then tape together. Make sure you refer to your instruction pamphlet and check out that size chart to figure out what size you should create. For reference, I'm creating a size 2. For this pattern, it's most important that you match your waist measurement to the size chart. Moving on to sewing. So first, place your front and back skirt pieces right sides together along the side seams and sew, serge, and press those seams. Then take your two front skirt pieces and place them right sides together along that open seam that will later have a slit in it. Sew from the waistline down about 8 inches to notch A, and then take it over to your iron and press that seam open. Then turn under the seam allowance one more time, 1/4 inch only from the waistline down 4 inches to notch B and press. So the top 4 inches of that seam should be pressed under 1/4 inch twice. Now you're going to top stitch from the waistline down 4 inches on either side of that seam to catch the seam allowance and keep it in place. Now you should notice there are notches on your pattern piece at the waistline on both the back pattern piece and on the larger front pattern piece. We are going to create gathers on both hips by sewing between the front notch and the back notch on one side, and between that front slit seam and the back notch on the other side. So to create the gathers, sew 2 basting stitches within the seam allowance between the notches. Do not backstitch and leave those thread tails long. And after you sew those 2 basting stitches, grab onto the bobbin threads and begin to gently tug the threads until you see gathers form. Prepare the waistband by applying fusible interfacing to the wrong side of the waistband, and use your iron to melt the glue on the back of that fusible until it's fully attached to the waistband. Then fold your waistband wrong sides together long ways to create a center crease down that waistband and give it a press. I'm gonna find the center front of my skirt and the center of my waistband and just line those up together. Place them right sides together. Your waistband should be unfolded and you should be pinning along one long edge. And then I'm gonna pin the rest of my skirt into that waistband. I'm gonna keep gathering the hips of the skirt until it fits into that waistband nicely, everything's laying flat, and we can pin it easily. Then I'm just going to sew, serge, and press this seam. Now it's time to insert the invisible zipper into the skirt shell. So I'm just gonna prep the shell fabric by serging down the center back edge on both sides individually. So the top stop of that zipper, the plastic part, should line up just below that center line, that crease in the waistband. So sew your zipper from that waistline crease down to your zipper notch on both sides, and then close up the rest of the center back seam by just sewing below the zipper down to the hem. Now for the skirt lining, take your front and back pieces and place them right sides together at the side seams and sew, serge, and press those seams. Now take your lining and place it right sides together with the other long edge of your waistband. Sew, serge, and press the seam. Now for my zipper, above those plastic top zipper stops, I'm just going to fold the zipper tape out of the way towards the seam allowance so it doesn't get in the way of our next seam, and I'm going to pin it in place. Then I'm going to fold the waistband in half right sides together along that center crease line we made earlier. I'm going to pin this in place, and I'm also going to place the lining and shell right sides together along that center back seam with the zipper sandwiched in between, and I'm going to pin through this as well. Now I'm going to sew down from the top where that waistband is down to the bottom zipper stop with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then for the rest of the lining, just sew below the zipper stop with 1/2 inch seam allowance right sides together. Then turn your skirt right side out and we're going to stitch in the ditch along the waistline seam. So you're going to sew right in the middle of that seam between the waistband and the skirt to lock everything together. Now for the ruffle of the skirt, we've included a chart in your instruction pamphlet that tells you how big of a rectangle you need to cut. Now it's quite a long rectangle that you need to cut because it is gathered. So also in your instruction pamphlet, there are 2 different cutting layouts that you could utilize. One shows how much fabric you would need to cut a long uninterrupted rectangle, and the other shows how you could piece together smaller rectangles to create one larger rectangle. For our skirt, I just wanted to show you guys what it would look like to piece together the rectangle. So to create one large rectangle, I'm going to cut a few smaller rectangles that end up creating that one larger measurement after sewing them together. We're just going to sew and serge and press those seams to connect all those smaller rectangles, and then we're ready to move on to hemming this ruffle. Now you could hem at the very last step, which I would recommend you to do if you are on the shorter end. However, it is going to be a lot easier to hem this ruffle edge now before it's gathered. So my advice to you might be to try on the skirt now, kind of pin the ruffle up in place to see where the length is going to hit you so that you can easily hem this ruffle now. So to hem the ruffle, turn up the edge 1/2 inch twice, press, and then top stitch that edge. Then we are going to create the gathers on the top edge of the long ruffle by sewing 2 basting stitches within the seam allowance along the entirety of that top edge. Do not backstitch at the beginning or end of these stitches. Then grab onto your bobbin threads and begin to gently pull them to create the gathers until it fits into the measurement of the hem of that first skirt tier. Then you're going to place the ruffle and the rest of the skirt right sides together and then pin, sew, and serge this seam. Now moving back to that front skirt slit seam, remember how we only sewed it connected about 8 inches down? We are going to continue connecting that seam down from where we stopped sewing to where the shorter ruffle meets the skirt. So we're only sewing another few inches down. So once we sew, we're going to press that seam open, but we're also going to continue to press open the unsewn edge below where we just sewed 1/2 inch. So all the way down that seam, all the way down to the bottom of the skirt, it should be pressed open 1/2 inch. Then we are going to press that seam allowance under 1/4 inch. Remember how we did that at the top? We are going to continue that all the way down that seam. So the entire seam on both sides should be pressed under 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Then we are going to top stitch on either side of those seams to keep the seam allowance in place, just like we did at the top of this seam. So where you stopped top stitching before, continue down, sewing all the way down that edge to the hem, top stitch the seam allowance in place. And right where that slit starts, right above it, I'm going to sew a stitch back and forth across the seam to reinforce it so the seam doesn't rip open. Now finally, we are going to hem the lining skirt. So just turn under that hem 1/2 inch twice, give it a press, and then top stitch that down to finish your hem, and then you are done with the skirt. Alright, that is how you sew this asymmetrical ruffle skirt. Don't forget the pattern is the first link down below, and you can use the code asymmetrical to get 30% off this pattern until tomorrow at midnight Eastern time. Let me know how you guys are going to make this skirt, for what occasion, what fabric. I'd love to know and I would love to see it. So if you post it on Instagram, make sure to tag me and you might be featured in Maker Monday on my Instagram stories. But yeah, let me know what patterns you want to see from me in the future, and if you like this video, feel free to give me a thumbs up because it's the easiest way to support your favorite creators for free. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. My handle is Kiana Bonollo. Subscribe, turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss out on pattern discounts in the future, and I'll see you next time. Bye!